Let's test this out.
Okay.
I've got a lick. I've got a lick that I just started learning 2 days ago.
Okay. Perfect.
And I've been thinking about this, and I think this is gonna be our special segment. Well, we've got, bum, ding, da dum, dee, ding, da, dee, da, 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 dee, dum, dum,
Oh, that's
ding,
a
da,
nice
dum,
piece.
ding,
What's
dum,
that?
dee, da, 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 dee, da, 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 da,
Oh,
da,
right, right, right.
da. So I haven't transcribed it yet, but I've got. Oh, I'm gonna do it slow. I'm already gonna cause brass
It's all
cancer,
right.
but
Do it slow. It's fine.
oh man. That's
I know that one. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, you're a great player, so this is like one of those infomercials where it's like the shirt's not really dirty and they throw a little tomato sauce on it and then they...
It feels pretty dirty to me. I'm like, whew, I'm putting the shame off to the side for a moment as,
Right, right. The
yeah,
vulnerability post, yeah.
it's super vulnerable actually
Yeah.
especially 'cause I haven't even played today. I'm
But it's
like, I
good.
could play it yesterday,
But you know what?
but
It's good. Like we should normalize the human aspect of playing these
yes,
instruments. Like
totally.
every note's not perfect. Like that's how it goes.
Yeah,
Professional baseball pitchers don't throw strikes every time, or they don't. The ball doesn't go
yeah,
exactly where they want it to go every time. I want to start with macro chaining, if that's cool.
yes,
Okay, it's primarily a 16th note pulse. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's take the first beat. So one
That's
E
a pickup.
and then you're gonna
Yep.
play the resolution. So you're gonna play five notes. You're gonna go one
E
E
and a
and
one.
yeah.
It'll be E and a one. Yep.
Oh, you want to do E and a one?
Or actually, I should do.
Yeah. So that'll be the first beat, right? So you're going to do one E and a two. That's what we'll
Yep.
call it. Then I want
Yep.
you to add. Now, do you have a metronome? The whole premise is that if you keep it at goal tempo, here's a way that you can do that.
Goal tempo is going to be like probably let's say 117 to be kind.
All right. So you're going to play one E and a two, rest, rest. You're
One
going to
E.
add two
Okay.
beats of rest, and then you're going to play two E and a three. So the note that you landed on,
Yep.
you're going to repeat that note.
Okay.
So one E and a
Yep.
two, rest, rest, two E and a
Three
three,
and a three.
rest, rest, three E and a four. So for now, just do one E and a
Oh.
two.
And even if it's a mess, move on or.
Well, for now, let's just do the first beat. We'll do it a couple times. Then we'll do beat two a couple
Okay.
times, beat three a couple
Okay,
times, beat
cool.
four, and then
Because
we'll
I
do...
have this tendency, and I think a lot of people have this. I play it once at 117. I'm like, that was a mess. I better slow it down to figure out how to play it. Here we go, 117.
Yeah.
One E and a two. One, two, three. I'm like, that was gross and a mess. So just do it again. That's better.
Yeah. Now, I would argue that
Yeah.
so at first, so let's say you're doing repetitions.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about it really hard and it is getting better. I would keep repping it until you don't have to think that hard and it still
Okay.
kind of stays pretty like
Ooh.
you hear the improvement, but you're not having to think so hard about it.
So you would mass practice until I can actually play that without thinking too much about it.
Yeah, I would.
How long do you think that's going to take?
Take 20 seconds. Whatever. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's see what happens in 20 seconds.
Yeah. I feel it. There, it's starting to come pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Cool. So now let's do the next beat. This is 2E and a 3.
Okay, there it's
Yeah.
starting to come. You can feel it when it like
Yeah,
hits in.
you can feel it settle in and you can hear it too. Like there's an
Yeah.
ease in the play. All right, so now 3E and a 4.
Taka-taka-dum. Okay, that feels pretty good.
Cool. And now we'll just do 4 into 1 and we'll kind of call it there. We'll just take a look at this.
Okay, sounds good. So let me see. Yep. Ah. Okay, for science purposes and for those listening, I'm really distracted by a burr in my articulation. It's like, and my mind is going all over here. And so I think what you're suggesting is just ignore that, stay focused on what I want, allow the body to figure it out at the
Yeah.
tempo.
Because I think that little burr, I think you're going to practice that in a different way later. Like, I don't think that's a Nutcracker issue. I think that's a Mars issue.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right.
So, like, I don't think that's preventing you from learning this repertoire.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you're right. That would be in the clarity department.
Right, exactly. So that's a clarity issue. We can sort that out, right? So now that we've got these 4 beats, now what I want you to do is 1E into 2, rest, rest. 2E into 3, rest, rest. 3E into 4, rest, rest. 4E into 1.
Okay.
So you would do that a number of times until you felt like that was in a better place.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
All right. It's not a perfect trajectory. That's fine. I think it's getting there. So now,
No, we're definitely getting somewhere. Yeah.
yeah. So now, instead of doing those 2 beats of rest in between, I want to do 1 beat of rest. So ba-da-da-da. So 1E into 2, rest. 2E into 3, rest.
Okay.
Fine. Yeah.
It's getting there.
Basically there. So for the purposes of just showing the method, now let's remove that. So now we're going to go 1E into 2, 2E into 3, 3E into 4, 4E into
Okay.
1.
Okay.
So you could do that a couple of times.
Yeah, let's try it.
So now 1E into 2E into 3, rest, rest. 3E into 4E into 1, rest.
Oh,
rest.
interesting. All right, and then bookmarking when I'm the boom 1 1 5 6 7 1. You know, da 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 da. That first beat. Now I'm realizing like, okay, cool. The reason that's not speaking, there's an agility issue here.
Right.
As I'm switching ranges, that's not necessarily about learning the passage. That's something I can smooth out later.
Right, right. So I don't think you need to get bogged down with that now. I think learning the repertoire is one thing and developing technique I think is a different thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna go daka 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 dum.
Rest.
Daka 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 dum. Like that?
Rest, rest. Yeah.
Oh, rest. Okay.
2 beats of rest again.
All right.
Yep. All right, so now let's try 1E into 2E into 3, 3E into 4E into 1.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep. And so when you get to the point to where you're like, okay, I feel good there, then you can go back and try 1E into 2E into 3E into 4E into 1. And then just put it together. And then you could take the next measure and do the same thing, the next measure, do the same thing, and then put it together that way. And then what I would also say is that, so there's that little burr on the one articulation in like the third beat, and then there's the leap in the first beat. I might say, okay, at the end of today, so let's say we're doing forward macro chaining. Then
Yeah.
tomorrow I might do goal micro chaining and pinpoint those areas to try to buff them out a little bit, and then come back to this macro training method so that every day is kind of
Okay.
informed from the previous day's results, but the train keeps rolling. Sometimes we get bogged down in, oh, I've got to slow it down because it's not perfect and I've got to make sure this lines up. And there's all sorts of other factors that we're prioritizing as opposed to just getting these motor patterns coordinated in the human body. And then
Dang.
once they're coordinated in our bodies and our brains, we can then go back and drill down in little areas that need it. But sometimes we fixate on those in the learning process. And I think it's the long way around in terms of just
Interesting.
learning the piece.
So if I was doing goal macro chaining, let's say it's my A, seems like there was the burr on there. I would just take that note
Take
at
the note,
tempo.
take like the note before, no after.
Okay. Uh, so like that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then add a note before, add a note after. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, interesting. It's already working.
And that's going to be weird at first because when you add a note before, and especially if it's like an upbeat entrance or it's like on the back of the double tonguing or whatever, really strange. You're going to like, it might take 15 repetitions for you to get comfortable. But once you get to that point to where you feel physically like letting go of it and it's happening, you'll be able to plug it in.
I feel it. No, I feel like I encourage
It's
anybody to
different,
try
yeah.
this. You feel it happening in the brain. It's like, oh, I'm working this muscle I've never worked before.
Right. Without
Yeah.
having to think specifically about that muscle. You're just, almost like in like Zen, like the state of Zen where you kind of just, you're aware that things are happening, but you're not connecting to them in the same way that you might be like when you're consciously thinking about certain things. Because let's face it, when we get to a state of automaticity, most of what we do, we're not thinking about. Like there's going to be a day
Right.
where you're going to play this lick and you're not going to know the notes that you're playing. You would have to go back and look at your music again and say, wait, what are the notes in this passage? Because you've played it so many times, you're not thinking about the individual notes, right?
Right.
So I think any way that we can kind of retain that in the learning process, which seems counterintuitive because what I'm basically saying is, can you learn it without overthinking what the notes are? Can you go through the patterns in a way to where you're not overthinking the individual notes, you're just learning the global structure of the patterns. And so sometimes I think people are reluctant to let go of that kind of, because we are control freaks in some ways. Like we want to know things, we want to be able to think through things and all that. And so to be able to let go of that and just kind of have faith in this kind of process, I think it's scary at first, but I think this is the way that the body is built to work.
So if I'm thinking about this, so I learned this lick slow last last night. Basically, I learned it,
Yep.
and I learned it very slowly because I wanted to be able to play it all by the end of the night, even slowly. There's like some satisfaction there in just knowing the notes.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's say you nail it at 72 beats a minute, it's a hit of
Yeah.
dopamine. And then you nail it
Yeah.
at 74 beats a minute, that's a hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
And you nail it at 70. And in my method, fail, 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 fail. Okay, moving on. Fail, fail, fail. So it's a so like you really, for me, people have different relationships with the concept of faith. But for me, and even as like a scientist, because sometimes we kind of think knowledge and faith are like these kind of two polar opposites to the same, philosophical spectrum. I do think that many people will have to employ at least a modicum of faith in the process because you don't get that same hit of dopamine through every repetition. You don't get that tiny victory in the same way. You have to think long-term investment. You have to say, well, in 10 reps, I know it's going to be better. I just need to trudge through these 10 reps.
Now there's what's called the spider technique as well. Have you heard of this? The metronome spider?
Well, a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Because then it's like, okay, well, at least I can even if it's every 8th rep, I get to play the whole thing and get the satisfaction of playing the music.
Right.
But we hear this with especially amateur pianists all the time. They'll go through a piece and they won't stop to fix anything and they'll just butcher it and then recover and then butcher and recover, but they don't want to stop and fix anything because they just want to enjoy the music.
Right.
It's agonizing to listen to as someone who's put a lot of time into practicing.
Yeah. And so for me, my micromanagement is in the chunks. It's in taking it and breaking it down into the chunks. And so I'm not implying that I don't go after quality. I think quality is absolutely part of what we do, and we want to sound good,
Oh yeah.
when we play, of course. And so we do need to get to a point to where it can sound well. But I think that it's not a linear progression, and I think we are trying to make it a linear progression when we slow the metronome down, get the victory at 72, get the victory at 74, get the victory at 76. We're just trying to make it a linear progression. That's not how the body works. I think it's totally reasonable to have 9 reps of crap and then 2 reps of like a little bit of a victory and then say, okay, I've made progress, moving on to the next chapter.
Now this is a paradigm that is huge. I mean, this is a statement about the way that we organize ourselves in the world around learning and growth.
It can be, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Have you noticed some area of your life? For example, I'm thinking about relationships, right? Like I've had a lot of different relationships in my life at this point in my 40s, and some of them have been more challenging than others. And it's like I've really tried sometimes to slow down. How do I communicate, for example? Like slow down and then incrementally improve my communication.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, it's like so fascinating to consider, what if I just went full speed all the time, didn't try to slow myself down, and screwed up the communication horribly the first 8 times, but would I like actually get it right the night? I don't know. Have you run into any areas of life where this maps in an unexpected way?
I can't speak specifically to my methodry of relationship navigation, but I can say that one of the things I've noticed is that when I was younger and I practiced diligently, some would say obsessively, and I wasn't getting the results, I like doubled down on like trying to control everything, right? And I saw that bleed into aspects of the way that I just live my life, right? Now that I have embraced and kind of come around like almost a 180 of saying, keep the tempo and we'll do these chunks. It's going to sound awful most of the time. It's going to be fine. I've noticed that the way that I live my life, I don't stress over the small stuff as much as I used to, and I think that there is something to be said for a lifestyle practice that maybe becomes the byproduct of habiting my musical practice this way.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm not like any kind of Zen master or anything, but there are times where I could feel my practicing was becoming extremely methodical, to the point of stress, and I wasn't necessarily getting the results. Now, yes, it's very organized and it's very structured, but there is kind of this, it's baked in that it's not all going to sound good. And I think that if you are trying to be an amazing player, then a lot of it's not going to sound good for various reasons. Either
Wholeheartedly agree with
you're playing things that you can't yet do as opposed to things that you can, right? Or the way that you structure the time that you're actually trying to like learn something new. A lot of it's just not going to sound good. And so we have to make our peace with that one way or another.
I'm getting this image of a skateboarder. There's a lot about skateboarding or physical sports, snowboarding, parkour, for example, is a big one, where you can't slow down the action because momentum is an important part of the action. I mean,
even if you think of take a baseball player who's swinging a bat. If you swing a bat at full speed, that's one thing. But if you were to slow that bat down to half speed to work on your mechanics, gravity is actually entering the chat with the way that it affects the bat moving through the air, right?
Yeah.
Or anytime there's an airborne projectile, right? Or any kind of ballistic movement. So throwing a ball is a ballistic movement. You can't do that at half speed and expect half the mechanics to do half the job. It doesn't work the same way, right? And I think there are ballistic aspects, especially to our articulation, I think to our finger movements, and I think to some extent the way that our embouchure engages to go from this note to that note, I think it is somewhat ballistic in nature. So I do think we are better served to at least understand and respect that that's part of the recipe. Yeah.
Let's talk about agility then. So walk me through some agility stuff, because I'm realizing this may be actually some place of harvest for me, and definitely for a lot of horn players. We struggle with that stuff.
So with agility, one of the things that I started to do was one day I just said, well, I spent years not doing lip slurs because I rejected this idea that I need to get good at that particular pattern. You know, and people will post like this lip slur, like the Marstell, or they'll post like these different patterns and they can like blaze through it. And I'm like, yeah, you're really good at that particular
Right.
pattern, but that's not
Right.
the same as just having agility. So
Yeah.
I basically said, and Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, how many patterns are there? And I said, well, how many partials are there? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's take 8 partials, 9 partials, whatever.
Wow, you're
And I said,
lucky. I'm doing 16 to 24
okay,
on a daily
16 to 24.
basis.
Well, all right, fine,
Yeah.
24 partials. And so if you were to say, but you're not doing all of them up there. You're not doing a lot on the 23rd partial, are you?
I I I play up to the 16th partial of every horn every day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for sure. And then I
But
do play
do
up
you
to the
do a lot
24th,
like
but
do you do a lot like from 15 to 16 or do you do like 12 to 16?
I like to play 15 to 16 and know my 15th, the location of my
Okay.
15th harmonics, but it's not like I do a lot up there. Maybe, you know,
Right, right, right.
that's about it. Would be
Right.
something I might play.
Sure, sure, sure. So one of the things I did was I said, okay, for the simplicity of conversation, let's take 8 partials because trombones,
Fair
trumpet,
enough.
tubas are all going to be functioning with 8, right? Or give or take. One is the pedal, and my ability to connect to the
Right.
pedal is significantly slower than everything else. So we're going to go from
Yeah.
2 to 8 or 2 to 6, whatever.
Okay.
How
Okay.
many different ways can I take an 8-note pattern going between the notes of 2 to 6 and landing on a note that's one away that is consecutively related to the note I left on? So it's all conjunct, right? So let's say like 2 3 2 3 4 5 4 3.
Okay.
If I were to then loop that pattern, I could then start back on 2 and it's conjunct, right? So 2 3 2 3 4 5 4 3 2 3 2 3 4 5 4 3. I could play it a bunch of times over and over. So that is one pattern. So I took an Excel spreadsheet and found basically 475,000 different patterns of
Let's go.
various leaps and so I figured out metrics to say, okay, if the distance between this partial and this partial, if they are adjacent partials, then that is a leap index of 1, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
second partial to third partial, that's a 1, right? Third
Yep.
partial to fifth partial, that's a 2.
Yep.
Fifth partial to eighth partial, that's a 3. So I basically just put all the patterns down, and then I had formulae do like the math and tell me what the average leap index is of the pattern. So I've got all these patterns that are quite conjunct. Then I've got all these other patterns that are slightly more leapy than that. Then I've got
Yeah.
all these other patterns that are significantly more leapy than that. And I
Wow.
started splitting them up into different categories of difficulty. And then I started doing them in ways where if a pattern ends in a 3, well, any pattern that starts in a 4 or starts in a 2, you could put those two next to each other and then do longer patterns, right? So 2 3 2 3 4 5 4 3 could then bleed into 4 5 4 3 2 3 4 3. And then you could play that as one big pattern, right?
Okay.
So I used my formulas and split up patterns based on their index of leapiness to come up with what I consider to be these level 1 lip slurs, these level 2 lip slurs, these level 3 lip slurs, these level 4 lip slurs. And then I do different patterns every day. So the lip slur pattern that I do today is that's what I did today, and then tomorrow is a different pattern, and the next day is a different pattern. So I think right now I have like a 64-day rotation. So I have 64 kind of days laid out. And
Huh.
so like if yesterday I did day 57's lip slur patterns, today I'll do day 58's lip slur patterns. And
Now, is that available online somewhere for if someone else wants to access it?
not yet. So
That'd be a cool thing to put up.
yeah, well, what I'm hoping is, or what I'm planning for is that with my stability training, I'm in the process of developing an app, so it'll be able to generate the workouts for you, track the data,
Perfect.
do all that. But I'm also then going to make an agility training app so that it will function in the world of lip slurs and flexibility. And I do think that if we have a global community all doing these similar patterns and then rating them on scale of how difficult it was, we can start taking aggregate data to say, hey, this lip slur pattern seems to be really hard for a lot of horn players. This lip slur pattern seems to be really tricky for a lot of trumpet players. This lip slur pattern seems to be really tricky for trombonists for some reason. And then that can start to evolve the index of difficulty ratings for various patterns. And so I think as a global community, we can actually start to kind of put some metrics on all of this.
And then what about, so for example, I'm having this hard time between the second and third harmonic and the first two notes of that lick that I was playing,
Yep.
where there's just like too much movement. And
Hmm.
I don't believe that a lip slur is really the most direct course of action to resolve that. What would you do for someone like me who's like, oh, there's too much, there's something happening here that's not optimal?
Right. If you're a stability client of mine, I would say we're going to get it in post. Like the stability training will slowly make it so that the way your face plays the third partial and the way your face plays the second partial will smooth out over time. So I wouldn't worry about it in that context. For a faster answer, I might turn to something like free buzzing, where you're literally free buzzing those patterns back and forth. Because if
Okay.
there's any kind of weird, janky motion, if you don't have any kind of instrument on your face,
Yeah. Is there any janky stuff in there?
I mean, there's you can see I can see that your jaw's moving a little bit, and I can see that one side of your jaw, like your depressor anguli oris on the non-horn side right now. So I'm assuming that's your left side, although the
The
mirror image might be that one.
It's my left side, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So your depressor anguli oris, which is a muscle that depresses and pulls on an angle from the oris. That's
Yep.
why it gets the name. Is
Yep.
engaged in a way where it's moving back and forth a little bit more so than the one on the right side. Now, I
Huh.
would, as a teacher, I wouldn't want you to think about that while you're playing. But if
Right.
we're having a conversation about like facial stability, like I'm going to
Yeah.
throw that out there.
Yeah.
So by noticing that, I would just suggest that as you free buzz, just try to have like minimal movement, beautiful connected sound between the two notes.
All right, so I'm working on minimal motors right now, and I see how the sound has gotten a little, at least over here, it's a little degraded. It's not as beautiful.
Right. It's
It's
not
the
as
same.
beautiful, but it is more consistent. So now you have to kind of bridge the gap between a more consistent sound and the beautiful sound that you want, like the vibrance and the, kind of the
Right.
efficiency.
With
But
the minimal motors.
usually what happens is when people start to free buzz and they don't free buzz a lot, they over engage the musculature in order to control the buzz. So you lose some of that vibrance. It tends to sound a little bit more dead. I don't worry about it too much because once you put the horn up to your face, you're going to go back to a more traditional way of playing that's going to be a little bit more vibrant. But just smoothing it out a little bit on the free buzz, I think can transfer.
Oh, so what would be the steps to make sure that that integrates? Because like I just did that, right? But that's
Yeah.
not going to fix the thing for me.
I don't know.
What
Try
I
to play.
just did. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe it is a little better.
It's a little better. And so I think if you did it every day, if you spent 1 minute on that every day for 5 days, I think at
Yeah.
the end, like at the end of that week or 7 days, the end of that week, you would notice that it's a little better. And it might be just enough improved to where now you don't need to worry about it in isolation. It's just at the level of everything else that's just generally getting better.
And then what if it's something like this octave and a twelfth? I don't imagine that free buzzing that is as relevant.
Oh, I don't know. I think
There's
it might be. I think you would know because if you go up and down slowly for like
yeah.
5 times, you would do all this weird contortion to keep the vibration going. But
Uh-huh.
then by the fifth rep, you would do 60% less, 40% less. It would be
Yeah.
slightly more efficient. And that
Uh-huh.
slight improvement to efficiency when you then pick up your horn might be enough to make a difference.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like
There's a
there's
little curling under. There's a little bit,
and
happening.
you think that it would be less healthy than keeping the lower lip stabilized, huh?
I mean, I think the goal is to keep the lower lip stabilized. I just don't think yeah,
I can't get that high
you
without rolling
can't
things
because
in.
the way that you engage over here is completely different when you do that.
Okay. Right, so I can't get up there. And
Yeah.
how high can you go with that?
On a good day, F5. It's not a good day. Right?
So, because for me, it's like,
Oh yeah, so you're up at like A flat five. Oh, there's maybe B flat.
yeah, so I can get up to a G. That would be a C6 that I just
C6,
got
yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
to. Yeah.
But
But I'm doing
now,
it by curling in.
right. So you have to ask, and this is something I've noticed with my stability clients. When you do the workouts long enough, we do free buzzing, and we measure the metrics on free buzzing as well. And everybody has a chart where things go up. The mid range is usually our strongest, and then at some point in the high register, the numbers take a dive. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The free buzzing numbers go up. Free buzzing takes a dive earlier in the range. Right.
Mm-hmm.
When free buzzing crashes, that is the exact moment in the chart where the notes on the instrument start to take a dive. It lines up almost every time. And if you think about it, if you can't do it with your face,
Yeah.
then you are anything higher than that, you are at least somewhat relying on the metal to help you out. Meaning it's different. Like something is slightly different about the way that the face is working to do that thing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you have significant jaw recession at a certain point in your range, then every note that you play on your instrument higher than that note, you're doing something different. Now, you might have smoothed it out to where your tone quality isn't really it's not a noticeable difference for people listening to you, but
Yeah.
there's something happening that things have changed, right?
Interesting.
That could affect agility, depending upon the player, depending upon how much is changing, depending upon how significant the change is. Once you cross that line, you might run into clarity issues. You might run into agility issues. You might run into tone production issues. Everyone's going to be a little different, though.
So I want to try your thing. You said when we emailed, you said that you could make the first 3 workouts available to anybody who mentions this podcast.
Sure.
Maybe now's a good time to talk about that. Like,
Yeah,
what are the
yeah,
workouts?
absolutely.
How do we access those?
So right now it's all very like I'm a guy with a lemonade stand. It's all very like low key because I'm still in the process of developing the app, and I've started a company, and we're basically in beta testing for a web-based platform that we're going to turn into a mobile app. It's just not ready yet. It takes time to get the algos to do everything that I've just been doing on my own. So what I do is I basically take a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, I chart people's numbers, I give them some workouts, they give me feedback, I crunch some numbers, I generate new workouts, and it's just a feedback loop in that kind of way.
Oh, so they're bespoke workouts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I write it down and send them just a little. So a workout might be you're going to play F4 for 4 minutes, 10 beats on, 7 beats off. So
Okay.
put your med on 120, play 10 beats on, 7 beats on, 10 beats on, 7 beats off, over and over for 4 minutes. Then you're going to take 1 minute of rest, and now we're going to go up a fourth, and we're going to do that note for 2 minutes, and we're going to do 6 beats on, 5 beats off, over and over for 2 minutes.
And why would the workout look like that? And what aren't we doing anything away from the horn to work these?
Early, no, just on the horn. So
Okay.
most workouts start as a 4 minute thing, a 2 minute thing, and a 1 minute thing. And then you would report back to me how fatiguing that was. Because over
Okay.
time, you're going to, like, if it feels fine, then you might say, well, that was a +5. It wasn't hard at all. I didn't feel any fatigue. Everything's fine. It was way too easy. But if you start feeling like as you're doing these repetitions, you start feeling like your face is crunching down, the sound's getting compromised, things are getting hard for you to just hold and maintain a beautiful mouth shape and a beautiful sound, well, then now we got to start reporting negative numbers. So you would report anything between a +5 to a -5.
Okay.
So let's say you do those 3 sets and you say +4, +1, -3. That tells me that the first set was a +4, relatively easy. The second set was a +1. The third set was a -3. That was the hardest set for you. I can then take those numbers and crunch numbers to figure out what your next workout should be using different notes within your range. Now I could say, okay, now we're going to do this note, and we're going to do it 17 beats on, 12 beats off. And now we're going to do this note, and it's going to be 9 beats on, 3 beats off. And now we're going to do this note. And what I'm doing is slowly trying to figure out like where the curves are in terms of your fatigue patterns. How much
That's
can you
fascinating.
do where it's fine? And then at what point does it start to become so challenging that you start to notice a degradation in your playing because of fatigue?
Doing these workouts has what effect other than understanding your fatigue patterns? Is this like a progressive overload kind of thing?
So at first it starts just getting baseline data. and just figuring
Okay.
out where the fatigue points are. But it is a moving target because as you start doing the workouts, you are doing long tones. You are
Yeah.
developing, some of your chops in some ways. So, it is a moving target as I'm trying to
Might
get your baseline data.
might you be exacerbating bad habits though if the coordination and recruitment is off?
Theoretically, yes. But what I have found practically is that if you are trying to play with a good sound, you are typically going to go toward the best sound that you can. And
Hmm.
then as you go through these workouts, as the weeks and months progress, you become more and more aware of when the sound changes or when the coordination pattern changes. You may not know that it's a coordination pattern that has changed, but you can tell things are getting pinched. You can tell that the sound isn't as vibrant. So you start reporting the numbers more accurately, and the needle gets very sensitive to when things start to change. So
Interesting.
with my clients, they actually seem to get more aware of very small nuanced changes in their tone quality. So that actually leads them to using better habits and being aware of when they start to stray from those good
That
habits.
makes sense.
Yeah.
How do we get started with this? I want one.
JasonSullivan.com. I mean, the easiest way is just to reach out to me. So if you go to my
Yeah.
website, JasonSullivan.com, there's a lot of information about my backstory and how I got into it and all that. And then you could just send me a message through there. Or my email is just jasonsullivan@gmail.com. And you're welcome to put that in the notes and people can reach out to me that way. But typically what I do is I'll hop on a Zoom call and I'll basically walk somebody through the first workout, where I'll set up some numbers as a baseline. We'll do the first workout. They learn the process of doing the workout. They learn how to report, and
Hmm.
then at that point, if they want to buy more workouts, they'll pay for the workouts. I'm like a personal trainer. They'll throw some money via Venmo or whatever, and I'll say, okay, if you've bought 8 workouts, then I'll send you the next workout. And the thing that I like about it is that, like, if you go to Tahiti and you don't bring your horn with you and you don't practice for 7 weeks,
Yeah.
you're not paying me anything.
Right.
It's not until I get the feedback from whatever your most recent workout that I sent you was, then I can generate your next workout. So it's a closed feedback loop of just
Hmm.
data that's reported back and forth. And as the workouts progress, I start charting out what your face looks like. And what the thing that's kind of cool is that now that we're kind of in the category of hundreds of people who have done it, I'm able to look at 25 different trumpet
Mm.
players, and I'm able to say,
Hmm.
okay, here's typically what trumpet players are doing. Because, to some extent, when you go to the doctors and you get your blood pressure done, they know
Yeah.
120 over 80 is a thing. And if you're a certain amount away from that, now there's cause for concern. And I think that
Hmm.
we do have similar vital statistics in terms of how long we can sustain sounds before we get tired, at various points in our range.
That's fascinating.